This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to be looking at viewer mail, but this is a little bit special today because all of the zines that were sent in were done by students who took one of two zine courses that I offered this year. So I know these people and their work very well, and I'm really happy to see the final results. And so we're going to hop right into it today. And I'm excited to share this with you. So first up is this zine, which comes to us from Geof Crowl. This is called Watering Our Inland Sea. This is a really cool project about the Great Salt Lake in Salt Lake City, Utah. So Geof wanted to do a project that he was very passionate about, and water levels in the Great Salt Lake are a concern that he's very interested in, and this is depicted in all the photographs that you're seeing here. So if you're not familiar, the Great Salt Lake is a large lake in Utah that doesn't have any drainage except for evaporation, and the water levels over the years have gotten increasingly low to the point where they're saying it's going to be a real problem by 2028. And as you can see, Geof decided to go with a newspaper format, which I thought was really cool, and I'll talk a little bit about this, but I think his photography is absolutely outstanding in here. This is a tough subject to convey in photographs that are interesting. It is kind of this landscape kind of thing, but it also deals with a problem with it, and a lot of the shots here, I mean, these are tough environments, and I went over this with Geof when we did our zine workshop, are really tough to make good photographs with, and I think he did an outstanding job. I love his style, especially when we get into some of these images like these pipes where he's got these real low exposures. They're very dark. He brings out a lot of those blues. I think this is really beautiful stuff. Another thing that I want to point out is Geof's design sense and his use of typography. The typography is very minimal. It gives you only the information that you need, and it's very compelling. So one of the things that I want to point out here, and just to give you a little technical background of how I do zine workshops. So we meet over the course of a month, so they're once a week. And the first week we talk about selecting work, picking a topic that's close to you that you want to work on, and then we start to narrow that down, and then we get into some of the technical details. Now, when we get to that third week, I break everything out into small groups, and the small groups have been so much fun because it gives me an opportunity where we get on Zoom and it's just me and maybe 3 or 4 people, and we're able to look at each project. Everybody learns from one another, but it really allows me to get to know the students really well. And I want to say a couple things about Geof's process on here that I was very impressed with. He had a really cool project. I think some of these images are absolutely outstanding. And one of the things he decided to do was this newspaper format. And it was not something that he intended early on, but something he chose to do. And as he said, it deals with an environmental issue. And when you deal with a newspaper, much like the lake situation, it tends to age really quickly. So I thought that was kind of a poetic way of putting this together. The other thing that's really cool, and I did talk to Geof about this quite a bit, is that he's doing something for an audience that isn't necessarily other photographers. It's actually people who might be interested in this particular issue. It transcends just the inner workings of photography, which a lot of us tend to do. We want to create work that's impressive, let's say, and have people compliment us on that. And Geof kind of went a different approach, and I think his project is very different in the sense that it's trying to get people's attention. And so I wanted to bring that out to you guys. I think Geof did an absolutely outstanding job on this. And if you guys are interested in knowing more on this, on my email newsletter, we did an interview with Geof that we're going to be featuring this next week. So I will put a link to Geof's zine below if you want to get a copy of this. It's highly recommended. And I'll also link up to our email list. So if you want to see that interview with him that'll be coming out this week, you may do so. So Geof, outstanding work. Appreciate you sending this along. It's really exciting to see this in its final form. All right, so next up, and this is absolutely beautiful. This is from Paul Tokotlian, and Paul is a friend of mine on Instagram. We've known each other a little while, and he took the zine workshop. He's a fashion photographer, and the story behind his zine, it dealt with a set of images he took during the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit back in 2020, he realized that being a studio photographer, he no longer was able, because of the safety situations with health, to work in a studio. So he started having models, and they were doing stuff open air on the street, and I love this project. This is called The Street is My Studio. A couple of the things that I love about Paul's work is the way he deals with both color and patterns, and I love the way that he picks images that work together as a spread, and they deal with contrasts, and I think he's really done this well when you see, like, for instance, the red dress and the yellow backdrop. Nothing is repeated, but everything complements itself, and in the middle he goes to this 2-page spread, and this is one thing that I really love, because we were talking about when we're doing layouts with zines or books or whatever that may be, you know, you've got to consider the reader's experience when they're dealing with it. And if you kind of have a pattern that sets up and it never breaks, it tends to get a little bit drab after a while, a little monotonous. And so we talked about the idea of moving for what we call full bleed, where an image goes all the way to the edge of a page. In other words, the image bleeds off of the page. This is a full bleed spread when we deal with this, and then these other images where we have borders around them. And I think this is a really nice way of breaking this up in the middle. This isn't a very long zine, and I think that's important to talk about too. And one of the things that we go over when we do these workshops is I make people kind of keep these down into about 8 images. And the reason why is not that the zine will be only 8 images when they're done, but I want them to work in a way that's going to be contained and really force the author to look at the way the images interact with one another. And then once you have that, then it's easy to start expanding on. I think Paul did an awesome job on this. And another thing that I want to share with you that he included when he sent this to me. And anyway, this is a mini version of it, which is really cool because it's pretty much the same stuff, but this is a little takeaway that he can give to models that he's working with, and it's been very successful. I also want to point out, and just because I was behind the scenes on all these and worked with all of the students, that Paul did an enormous amount of work with the color that was being represented. Color is an important feature in his work, and he wanted the saturation to come out but not be too saturated. And as you guys have seen, some of the stuff that gets mailed in, that can be a problem area very easily when you're not used to working with a printer. And Paul did work very closely with the printer when he did this and got some technical information on it. And Paul, the color is absolutely outstanding on here. I think you did an excellent job. So anyway, really proud of all these. And Paul, thank you for sending this in and sharing. This is really great. So one of the points that I want to stress on here is how different each one of these are. And I think this is a testament to the talent of the students that I had in both of these courses. But I really love, and this is kind of the way that I teach it, there's no like, here's how you start with this image and you go to this image. And I'd really leave it up to the students to interpret their own work. And we talk about that because when you're doing a zine, a lot of people, a lot of photographers are used to seeing their photographers on an image by image basis or even a session by session basis, depending on how you think about your work. But when you start putting it together where you have layouts and spreads and how the work relates to itself, how it relates to other images in here, and when you're putting it into a cohesive subject like this, how important that is and how it starts to take on a different effect, not only with the work, but the way the photographer thinks about it. And I have a bunch of different examples that I want to show you on here, but I wanted to point that out. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, who are the awesome folks over at Squarespace. How easy is it to build an amazing website in a matter of minutes? Squarespace has you covered. It's dead simple. Head over to Squarespace, hit get started. You can start by using Squarespace Blueprint AI and SEO tools, which will give you an impressive website in no time. Something unique because, you're not like other websites. Give your site a name. Next, you can build your homepage. We'll start with a few preset layouts just to get us going. Want to sell products like prints, books, maybe you make a zine? Well, you can feature those on your homepage. Create a few more sections if you want. Let's also give it a color palette. There's a whole bunch to choose from. Just get us started. We can change this all later. Next, let's select the typography choices. Welcome to your website. Everything is set up and it's all ready for you to customize. Squarespace is built on Fluid Engine, the next generation of website design. Select Edit, and Fluid Engine allows you to drag, place, and resize any element on the page. You can snap these to a grid. You can make them float on top of one another. You can freeform however you like. You can even preview and adjust how the site looks on either desktop or mobile. The layouts are independent. Of course, you'll want a portfolio for your work. Creating an image gallery is as easy as dropping a folder of images on your web browser. Once uploaded, you can drag to resort, customize the look, and Squarespace writes all of the code for you. Everything just works and it looks fabulous. Want to sell your own prints, books, or zines? Flexible payments allow you to make the checkout process absolutely seamless when you sell products or services. You can accept credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, and in eligible countries, you can offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. You should try Squarespace for yourself. It's absolutely free, no credit card required. Just go to squarespace.com/AOP, sign up for that free trial. If you decide Squarespace is right for you, I can save you an additional 10% on your order by using offer code AOP on checkout. That's right, the code is AOP. So stop procrastinating, go build your website today. And I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. All right, so next up is this zine called Littoral from my man Philip. And Philip and I worked very hard on this, and I know how much work he put into this. He had a beautiful result in the end. So Littoral is essentially documentary photography, and it's based on a series of trips that he made. There's a street photography element to this, even though none of this takes place on the streets. I'd prefer to think of it as documentary, but I want you to look at the design on here and the way he lays out his work, because I think it's really beautiful. The cover and the back cover, we have full bleed images, and then we go to borders once we get inside. I think Philip has an amazing sense of color. I think the reproduction in this zine is absolutely outstanding. I think he did an excellent job. And of course, we get from the images that have borders around them to breaking that design up when we go full bleed. And he's done these with a series of full bleed spreads, which I think are really nicely done. Another thing that I want to point out is his use of text in here, because there is a lot of text, but it's not too much. The typography is nice. It is left on its own. In other words, he's not blending text and images and telling the reader what everything is exactly, but you get a sense of that when you look at the work overall. And this is something that's really important, because one of my biggest gripes that I have with a lot of zines that are sent in is people feel like they need to put context and label every image, and sometimes that's appropriate depending on the project, but that's one of the things that we stressed in the workshop was how do you put text in here in a way that's not going to be overbearing or cumbersome to the person reading it. I think Philipp did an awesome job on this. I also think what's interesting about his style of photography is it's documentary in the sense, but you do feel like it's a point of view. In other words, you as the viewer are in here in the scene, and that's realized when you see a lot of pictures of people in here. But I think this is really outstanding work. And Philipp, man, this is really nice to see in its final form. And so congratulations on this. Nice job. I'm going to link up to Philipp's work as well as everybody else in the show description below. So be sure to support your fellow photographers and colleagues. And Philipp, nicely done. So next up is a project that was done by Judy Odell, which I think is really cool that I wanted to share. This is called 30 Square Miles, the Watershed. And essentially, this is a project that's very important for Judy. She's volunteered to photograph for an agency called Karma, which is Citizens Against Residential Mining Activity. And this is a threat in her home state of Maine. And she wanted to include a bunch of images in here and as a kind of awareness kind of project. What I think is interesting about Judy's is she had a lot of information she wanted to deal with in here, including maps, and she did have the need to label a lot of images. And we did work extensively on how to do this in a very clean way. And so I think she did an awesome job on here. And I want to show you guys this because, again, like I said, I see a lot of zines where people want to label every photograph. Well, if you give the page numbers, then people can look and see where locations are at the end, which is important. And she also has her maps in here. So Judy, very nicely done. I'm really glad this came out so well. The scene is called The Same But Different. This comes from Steve Klemes. And one of the things that we talked about early on is looking at your work and seeing how it relates to itself. And one of the things that he went for in this project were contrasts. And so when you deal with duality in subject matter or geometric shape, and kind of how those images play against each other. And so this worked really well for this whole idea of doing image spreads. I think he does really beautiful work. This is absolutely outstanding stuff. I love how he is using subframing extensively throughout here to really focus your eye in on a specific subject. Really cool, really nicely done. And this is another one that's really fun to see in its final form. So Steve, I hope you're happy with this. It looks awesome. And next up is a very personal project, which I really love. This comes to us from Stacey. This is called Benches and Chairs and Tables. Oh my. If you look at the cover image here, and I really loved it when Ed showed us this image, it looks like two images, and I thought that's what it was at first. It's not. It's taken in Banff, and it's a deck overlooking Lake Moraine there. Anyway, really cool stuff, but he is from Canada, from Calgary specifically, and when you go through this, one of the things he realized is how much of an abundance of benches and tables and chairs there are in public places in Calgary, so that's what this zine pays homage to. I think it's very quirky, very personal, and I think Ed did an awesome job on this. And like I said, I'm going to link up to everybody's work in the show description below, so make sure you check it out, and I'll show more of these as they start coming in. But this was really fun to do 2 different zine sessions, and for those of you who are curious, I know you're going to ask them to do them again. The answer is yes. We're working on the schedule right now, and so I'll announce those eventually. But I wanted to share some of the work from students that's already been done. I'm very proud of all the stuff that's in here, and I think you guys should be very proud of your work as well. So until the next video, I'll see you guys then. Later.